and blowing their trumpets and whistling and shouting, like schoolboys. As they got closer, within nice rifle range, we had the order to fire. We opened fire with rapid fire and brought them down in hundreds. Hundreds of them fell. And in front of our trench, I should think, when the attack was over, there would be anything to 2,000 to 3,000 dead and dying in front of our brigade. They were lying there, and for about 3 or 4 days, the smell got so awful. We prayed that the wind would blow in from the sea and take the stench of the dead over into the Turkish trenches instead of blowing it to our own, as the stench got so awful at that time.
For both sides, infection and disease were now the dangers. A frontline armistice was arranged. Anzacs and Turks worked together to bury the dead in large communal graves.
I wasn't one of those burying the dead, but I sat on the parapet and after all walked over and offered bully beef to one Turk, and he smiled and seemed very pleased and passed me a whole string, 2 strings of dates, I think it was.
3 weeks after the landings, Hamilton launched a major attack from Cape Helles to take the first day's objectives, the village of Krithia and the high ridge of Ashi Baba. The attack failed. By the end of May, Hamilton's British casualties alone totaled 38,000 men, and he cabled London for more troops, more ammunition. Touring the Anzac bridgehead at that time, Hamilton saw
men staggering under huge sides of frozen beef, men struggling up cliffs with kerosene tins full of water, men digging, men cooking, men card-playing in small dens scooped out from the banks of yellow clay. Everyone wore a bank holiday air. Evidently, the ranklings and worries of mankind, miseries and concerns of the spirit, had fled the precincts of this valley. The boss, the bill, the girl, envy, malice, hunger, hatred, had scooted away to the Antipodes.
But there was another side to the picture, and Hamilton saw that too.
All the time, from that fiery crest line, there comes a slow, constant trickle of wounded, some dragging themselves painfully along, others being carried along on stretchers. Bomb wounds all, a ceaseless, silent stream of bandages and blood. Yet 3 out of 4 of the boys have grit left for a gay smile or a cheery little nod to their comrades, waiting for their turn as they pass down on their way to the sea.
The ding-dong struggle continued all through June and July. By the 1st of August, each side had lost 57,000 killed and wounded. Each battle held its nightmare of shadeless heat and dust and death. Soon a cynical prayer was passed along the front line. Please God, send us a victory, but not in our sector. The smell of death thickened in the blinding sun, and the strain of living from day to day under the eyes of the enemy took its effect.
During the day, we could see the vultures heading down toward the bodies of both Turks and their own men. And occasionally we would take a pot shot at them to try and keep them off, particularly if we thought there was somebody wounded out in front. But we couldn't fire too much at them for fear of giving away our own position, because the Turks seemed to have very good observation posts and were able to see practically everything that we did.
Water was very scarce, and when the summer came, of course it brought the disease and the flies with it. The rations, of course, was nothing only bully beef and apricot jam. And when we did get the summer, the jam was a regular issue, nothing else but apricot. When you opened that, it was almost like water. You couldn't put it on your biscuit or anything like that. It was just a matter of pouring it on. And before you could get that to your mouth, it was absolutely, well, literally covered with flies. It was a case of holding it with dropping the tin and holding one biscuit with one hand and waving the flies off with the other all the time.
Lethargy settled over the beaches between the battles. 1,000 men a week were going down with dysentery.
It was a very weakening thing. We walked about after a time like skeletons, finding it difficult even to move at times. And of course, when one was out of the line, there were heavy things to lift, on fatigue, like water carrying and helping to dig roads and so on. It was as much as we could do to lift the tool or whatever it was that we were carrying.
In faraway London, the ripples of Gallipoli made themselves felt. Lord Fisher resigned, and the Conservatives insisted that Churchill should go too. The shell shortage persisted. The Liberal government fell. And all the time the campaign in Gallipoli drew in more troops, more ammunition needed on the Western Front. The War Council agreed that Hamilton could have 5 more divisions ready for action by the end of July. But by then the equivalent of 10 new Turkish divisions had dug in and were waiting. The ripples of Gallipoli touched more than politics. They touched the hearts of men and worked their changes on human nature itself. To the Allied soldiers fighting on the peninsula, the Turks displayed not only fanatical bravery, but surprising chivalry too. The half-affectionate nickname, Johnny Turk, was born.
The Turkish soldier was very highly regarded by me and all the men on our side. He was always a clean fighter and one of the most courageous men in the world. When they came, there was no beating about it, but they faced up to the heaviest rifle fire that you could put up, and nothing would stop them. They were almost fanatical. We came to the conclusion that he was a very good bloke indeed. We had a lot of time for him.
The British virtues also revealed themselves. The extraordinary talent for improvisation, for making a harbour on an open shore, making bombs out of jam tins. Turning a hole in a gully into a little bit of a home, making a barrage without enough guns or shells. And the British also revealed their traditional stubbornness in defeat. But there was a sense of sickening disappointment. The failure of the Navy could not be disguised. When German submarines entered the Mediterranean and sank 2 battleships, the rest of these great vessels scurried for safety to their harbours. As they steamed away, they took with them most of the hope that was left. The glittering prize of Constantinople began to fade away. Ian Hamilton had one last shot in his locker. One more flanking attack up the peninsula, another landing. More reinforcements arrived, including 3 divisions of Kitchener's new army. They possessed the virtues and the faults of this great volunteer force, its eagerness, its devotion, its lack of training, its ardent young soldiers, and its elderly generals. On August the 6th, the new army divisions landed at Suvla Bay in front of a dried-up salt lake. It was a complete surprise. The way across the peninsula was open.